One man, one goal, to become a pro artist. But he must face his biggest fear, drawing backgrounds. He only has 7 days to complete this daily challenge. Will he succeed? Or will he let self-sabotage tear him down? One night.
Oh, can you hurry up? Like, what are you talking about here? I don't need to hear all this extra shit. We don't need to do all this talking and this narration. Let's just go ahead and let's get started. I'm already stressed out about this. And all you're doing is talking,
Okay,
talking,
you know
talking.
what? I'm actually doing you a favor.
So I try to test myself and see if I can stick to a challenge of 7 days straight drawing background art. Yes, I am part of the crew of artists who just draw characters and leave a plain white background, or even just blur the background sometimes. Yeah, is it because I'm lazy? Some might say. Is it also because I don't practice enough backgrounds? Yes, so in that case, sometimes it just comes from an insecurity. I don't want to draw this mid background with a nice character I just did. I'm so proud of the character. Why would I ruin it with a background when I could just put a white background on the back? But we need to get over that. We need to face our fears. So with this challenge, it's gonna help me get over that by drawing one background every day for 7 days. And also there's a thing called Plan April, where every year in the month of April, a bunch of artists all over the world hashtag plan air, plan April, whatever, and they draw one background every day for the month of April. So 30, 31 days, whatever. That's too much for me, I'm not gonna lie to you. And every time April comes, I see artists posting their amazing artwork of the backgrounds, and I'm just like, wow, if only that could be me. However, I do dabble in backgrounds here and there. I've done some things, but it just needs to be more consistency, because I feel like every time I draw a background, it's like I'm reviving myself of not doing it for 3 months. So with this challenge, I'm going to deep dive into that, stop avoiding my fears, and let's see how it goes. Let's go get started with day one. Okay, starting off with day one. Day one is, I feel like, the day where you're most motivated because you just made the decision, or you as in me, I just made the decision to do this challenge. But I was still didn't feel comfortable to make up my own background. So I used a reference, and this reference is from a picture that I took while I was on a night out walk with a friend. You can obviously go with things that you find online, but don't forget that outside, like, it's right in front of you. Just put on some shoes, head on outside, go for a walk like I did, and you can just snap a picture of anything and use that as a study. I feel like with this, it just feels a little more safer. I don't have to worry about making up things in my own head and actually coming up with something. So while I was on this walk with a friend, we were literally having a conversation about something totally different. And while I'm walking, I just took a few steps back and I said, wait, look at this view. And then just took a picture. Now, I didn't have it in mind that I was going to actually use this as a reference to paint it, but it was kind of just those things where you take a picture, you're like, this is a nice view, let me just take it. And it ended up working out because here I am today. And also with the reference, I'm not trying to be so stuck up and make it perfect. As you can tell from the tree or even how I did the bench, I'm not getting caught up on making it so perfect. I'm just using that reference and letting the reference be a reference so I can then make a painting that is inspired by it rather than it being just a full-blown super realistic replica of an image. And also I want to keep these paintings pretty limited, so we're not going to try and go past like an hour and a half. So we want these to be quick and just get them out daily. Now, a little bit about my process with this. As you can see, I didn't start off with a sketch. I kind of wanted to just go in and start building up the shapes using different layers. So not getting too caught up on drawing this and focusing on how I would paint it traditionally. Doing studies like this digitally definitely helped me with my traditional painting skills. So I'm just kind of looking at it as I'm just layering and layering and layering colors on top of colors and shapes on top of shapes. Now, I also really like the limit of different types of brushes I used with this. As most of you know, with my art, I'm usually just use brushes that I create. I was only using about 2 different types of brushes that I made, and depending on when you're watching this video, this brush pack might be linked in the description down below if you guys want to give it a try. I'm also using this challenge as a way to test out these brushes before I actually give them up to the public. So just depending on when you're seeing this video, it may or may not be linked in the description, but be sure to check it out. And that's it for this painting for day 1. It was really fun, easy, and therapeutic for me to paint. I didn't really test myself or challenge myself too much. It was kind of just to get the gears moving and get started with what's to come in the following days. Okay, now for day 2. This time I went in with a bit of a sketch. However, the sketch is still very rough. Didn't really grasp any details. We're just getting those basic shapes of what we want to paint. And I am again using a reference this time because I did still not feel safe enough to make something of my own. This reference was a picture taken by my friend while we were at a park nearby. And even though I have that sketch, I'm not afraid to still move things around because in the end, you're not even gonna see the lines of the sketch. And as for the painting style, still I'm trying to simplify everything because we want this to be studies that are, again, within 1 to 2 hours. So I'm not focusing on painting in every little rock or every little leaf on a tree. The thing I love about nature is that you can't really tell me I'm doing it wrong. I just have to make it believable. Rather than me painting in each individual leaf of a tree, I can give you these shapes that imply that the leaves are there. And that also helps with these brush strokes that I'm kind of doing with these brushes that I made. And then obviously the composition, it's already made. We have our reference out, but I really like the scene of it just bringing the focus on these swans here. You have this one that's in kind of the mid ground that's swimming, and then the one that's in the back kind of on a curb of sticks and rocks. And then for the trees, we just had those bland shapes there, but now to show some of the leaves, we're just going to do like a stippling type of technique where we're just dotting different colors to just add that little splash of, detail. And being that we're choosing a reference, which is already making this a bit easier, I did need to tackle some sort of challenge, and that challenge is going to be the water. Water reflection is something that I don't often paint, so I already knew that this was going to be kind of tough, but I worked around this challenge with just doing a mixture of horizontal and vertical lines using my brushes. You can see that in the beginning we have some lines that are just going straight down, in which these vertical lines I'm creating represent the reflection of everything above the surface, like the swan, the rocks, the trees. And then I start to go over top with some horizontal lines to kind of look like the water is moving in a horizontal direction and has a bit of a ripple effect. And there we have day 2 complete. I'm really happy with this one actually. At first it was kind of hard trusting the process, but that's just what we got to do with all of them. Different from day 1 is that this one is more of a landscape rather than, portrait, which I figured is not only better for recording and posting the video for you guys here, but it's also better to just think about backgrounds for animation, because most of the time when we do animation, it's going to have an aspect ratio of 1920 by 1080. But let me not bore you guys with all the technical stuff. Let's just move on to day 3. Okay, now for day 3, this was my first attempt with drawing from imagination, as well as trying to put a character in there. Now, my idea is to go with something that's like desert or like canyons type of view. And with that, I had some references to help, but I'm not actually drawing the references. I'm just using it to help me. Rather than obviously seeing day 1 and day 2, we literally just took one reference and drew what we seen. So when I'm drawing things from imagination, I definitely do struggle a little more because you got to think much more than drawing what you see. So not only am I focusing on like the colors and trying to create some structure here, I'm also thinking about the composition, and that is something that I kind of struggled with. I really wanted to work with shape language as well and kind of force you to look at the focal point. So I decided to go with, our character in the bottom right, and then in the background, in the distance, we're going with this mountain that seems to have some type of opening at the bottom, and everything else around it, I'm kind of just trying to shape the composition to show you the path that our character would take to get there. And also something different you can tell is that with this painting, I'm starting from grayscale. Whereas the first two, day one and day two, we went straight in with color. However, because this is with imagination, I now have to kind of figure out my values first before I get into color. And this step really just helps me figure out, okay, where is the light source coming from? So the sun being the light source, where the shadow is going to be, and how is this all going to shape this composition as a whole. And then once I have just a basic idea of that grayscale painting, I just start to move on with color. And I like this idea of having the light source from the left side behind all the mountains, because this will create a shadow that kind of points in the direction of where our character is. And as for the colors, obviously with this desert canyon type of area, it's going to have a lot of orange. I've seen a lot of references where it was like a sunrise type of sky where the sky is also orange. However, I didn't want this to just be completely orange, so I decided to go with a more blue sky. And also, this is a great use of complementary colors. Because blue and orange are complementary colors, I just think this makes a good combination together. And you know, at this point, we have in the base of everything that we need, so I'm kind of just adding in the details of everything, and I'm not stressing as much. I feel like when it comes to drawing from imagination, especially when it comes to backgrounds, because I don't practice enough, it's like I just get so stressed in the beginning stages of thinking or coming up with what I'm going to draw. So here it was pretty much stress free. We're just painting in our details and making this all come to life. So now that's it for day 3. I'm pretty happy with this one. Let's move on to day 4. Okay, guys, day 4, I was not feeling my best. I was not super motivated. However, I did not want to skip a day. So I decided to go with something that still includes a background, but it's going to be just a guy surfing on like this huge wave. I kind of wanted the character to be in like the bottom right corner and then have this like huge wave like just swooping over him. There's not really much to it. I mean, one thing that's different with this one is there's not any real sense of structure or like any crazy perspective. In the other ones, there was things that I needed to create some structure with. So day 1, we had that bench, the tree, whatever. Day 2 and day 3, like mountains and hills and things like that. This is literally just a wave you're looking at. However, I am happy with the way I painted it. I like the brushes that I used because this was kind of fun to just experiment with the brushes. I guess this day I just didn't really focus too much on the challenge, and I was more so like, hey, let's just have fun using these new brushes. So I try to see different ways I can utilize these different strokes in the waves. Like we got these lines and these splatters and just different things like that to represent the energy of this wave. So it doesn't just look like some still piece of, I don't know, plastic, but this is actually water you're seeing. And then also I just wanted to simplify how I colored the character because it's not like no close-up drawing of a character. I didn't feel like I needed to add in crazy details. So yeah, guys, not much to this one. However, I'm still happy that I've been dedicated and we're sticking to the challenge. So yep, that's day 4. Let's move on to day 5. Okay, day 5, I woke up pretty disappointed and yesterday's work, day 4. So I decided to do 2 things that I don't usually do, which is we're going to draw those thumbnails and we're going to tackle something with more structure. So this is going to include some type of mansion, and I had this idea to go with like a spooky looking mansion. Not to say that the house itself will have like interesting shapes to make it look spooky, but I want it to be the lighting. Like I have this idea that whenever it's nighttime, houses kind of look scary when you see every room is lit up. I don't know what it is, but even like walking through certain neighborhoods and you just see houses at night and they just have their lights on inside. I don't know, something about it just has a sinister vibe to it. So that was my idea with this. Now, with the thumbnails we have, I decided to go with the top left one. I do like the other ones, but this top left one I feel like was simple enough for me to get done around the same time of like an hour to 2 hours for these studies. With this, I didn't even go in with a sketch once we actually started. I just went straight in and started drawing in shapes because I wanted to have more of like a vector like shape approach with this and then go on with details afterwards. Now, as you can see with my brushes, I'm using these different type of brushes I have where there's color variation. So if you see like that brownish beige and even in the windows, it's not that I'm selecting multiple colors and just painting them in. It's I'm using one color that has a color variation setting. That's why you're seeing like this transition of two different colors together. And I like to do that in at least the base of my paintings because it really just serves as like an underpainting and you end up seeing just more colors in the end. And I'm trying not to be too picky with the perspective things because I want this to be fairly quick. I can sit here all day and try and fix this and make every little detail perfect, but I just want to serve this as, like the other ones, a quick study. So we're just not trying to be too particular with things and just get going. I feel like with me, I fear drawing interior drawings and even houses and buildings just because it requires more thought and it requires more knowledge with perspective. So when it comes to just nature and stuff, you can draw any shape you want, really. It just has to look believable. When it comes to buildings, however, you can kind of see where things are lacking. And now at this stage, I pretty much have the base for the mansion. So now I'm going ahead and using different brushes to add in some textures for the background because the sky is pretty bland right now. The foreground is pretty bland. So we just want to have some more color variation in there as well as different textures just to make this all come together. Now I was battling back and forth between if I wanted to make the roof like more purple or blue, but yeah, we kind of figured something out in the end, but it was kind of a back and forth. I was confused on how I wanted the sky to look as well, but I feel like if I were to make the sky too bright, like it could, I don't know. It's just me overthinking. Some things I can't really explain. It's just kind of, I just go and I do it. As for the foreground, I kind of wanted to have this hill. That's why you see it's not so much of a flat surface. We have a hill, and it kind of shows that this house is secluded by itself. There's probably not many neighbors nearby, and we have this like driveway walking path up to the house. Obviously, there's no cars there, but who knows? There could be some there in the garage on the right side, or maybe this person just has a big ass house and no cars. Who knows? And I also figured if I'm gonna add texture everywhere else, I'm missing texture on the actual house. Like the house looks too, like it looks like a Barbie doll house. Like you know what I'm saying? It looks like plastic. So I just went in and added these little dots of texture just to give it like some brick. It looks like it's made out of brick or something. Like if we just left it flat, I feel like that's only okay if it's far in the distance, but where we're standing, or you can say where the viewpoint is, we would still see texture from the mansion. So I just felt it was necessary to add that at the end. Great, and that's it for day 5. I'm actually pretty proud of this one. I'm happy that I challenged myself. That was part of this, was to challenge myself with something that I don't do often. And I think this made up for day 4. Day 4 I was feeling pretty lazy. We got day 5 going and juices are flowing. We're ready to move on to day 6. Okay, so now for day 6, I decided I wanted to go with a background that was somewhere cold in like Antarctica, and it would have, glaciers, icebergs, and I want to have penguins in it as well. Like those are gonna be the characters. It doesn't have to be close or super detailed. So in some of these thumbnails, I have them sliding off or jumping off the glaciers. I was doing these different thumbnails just to give me an idea of whether or not I wanted the action of the scene to be happening all throughout. So what I mean by that, like in the top left, you see we have the penguins in the distance and then they're sliding down, and I would have like a splash or they would land. It's more so in the foreground. Whereas the one on the top right, you see everything's just in the mid-ground and the penguins are there, they're jumping off the cliff. Or sorry, the glaciers. And then even the bottom left, we have everything kind of happening in the mid-ground, but the penguins are going to be much smaller to show the size of this glacier and that it's actually large. And I guess in a sense, the ones on the right have, the same setup with the action happening in the middle. Only difference is the one on the top right is going to be under, like in a cave, or sorry, I guess glaciers have caves. So yeah, in a cave. Whereas the one on the bottom right, it would just have a sky in the distance and the water going far out. And in the end, I decided to go with the one at the bottom left just because, I like all of these, but I feel like the other ones would look great as more so of a scene, like in an animation. Whereas this one in the bottom left, I feel like serves just as a good like background painting I can get done. And again, I'm going to go with the same approach with just starting off with shapes. So I don't overcomplicate it and try and sketch this out again. Plus, I guess I did have the thumbnails and I could have just scaled that up, but whatever. Let's just start off with shape building. And then also I'm using the shape and the angle of the clouds as a trick to direct the viewer to where I want the focal point to be. I said I wanted to go with this idea of the penguins are just having fun sliding off the cliff here, and also creating a cave in the middle of the glacier because I feel like that would just give it more depth while still being minimal with the details that I'm adding in. I'm also trying to put in some minimal details that suggest what's going on as well. So we got the characters, obviously they're in the distance, so I don't got to do too much detail, but we have one penguin that's sliding off. We have one that's already, off the cliff, about to land in the water. And then we have that splash in the water, which implies that there's already a penguin that jumped in there. So I don't know, I feel like little things like this can just give a little bit more of a story to what's going on. Though, yeah, I just did these tiny little dark blue shapes. It's like you look at the environment, you look at what's going on, and you can kind of get the idea of, okay, these are penguins having a good time. And then overall, I was kind of struggling with the clouds in the sky, but I was like, bro, stop overcomplicating it. Just let's get this done and let's move on. Though it does look a lot more simpler because our subject isn't a lot. I feel like I really enjoyed my thought process and just playing around with these shapes. However, one thing that pisses me off about this is I'm looking at it now and the shape of the glacier literally looks like a Nike Air Max shoe. But anyways, let's go to the last day, day 7. Okay, so for our final day, day 7, I decided to start off with a sketch this time rather than just going in with our shapes. And my inspiration for this one is actually the game Minecraft. So I'm not going to go with the style where like Minecraft is very blocky. It's just the idea of these floating islands that I get from the game. I've created worlds with them, seen worlds where people have floating islands and then like houses and trees on top. So I just really like this idea, even with the small bodies of water just pouring off of the edges. I just love the way that looks. The difference with this final day though, I do want to go with something more flat. Like there's obviously going to be structure here, but with how I paint it and render everything in, I don't want it to be heavily relying on the texture of these brushes because I've seen that that's been a common thing that I've been doing. Not to say that that's a bad thing, but just for this last one, I just want to go with something more simple, I guess more cartoony. And again, I'm using these clouds in the back to help me shape this composition. Wanted to create this idea of this is maybe a magical place, so let's add in these just floating rocks around. I don't know, because if there's a floating island, I'm guessing there's some type of magical things happening around, because how is the island just floating like that? So why not just include floating rocks as well? And also clearly making this path here where we have for our character. So if he's looking at this house, he's looking at those islands, those tiny little islands in front of him. How is he gonna get across? Obviously he's gonna have to make a jump, because your character's path, it's important to make that clear when you're drawing a background with it. Let's say I didn't put those there. It's like, okay, we have this character right there at the bottom right corner, we have the house and the island there, he's clearly looking over there, but how the hell is he gonna get over there? Does the character have wings now? Like, you see what I'm saying? I would have to now imply that he has something to get over there. And that's really just because this is one still image. Obviously, if this was animated, we can go in further and maybe someone comes and maybe a dragon flies in. I don't know. Like, something else could happen, but just in one still image, we want to make that clear, or at least I do. So at this point, I feel like I'm looking at these as much more as, oh, let's just draw a background to draw a background, and more so let's utilize different storytelling skills and try and be intentional with the decisions we're making. And I don't know why I really struggled with the character here. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. I had no character in mind. I just had a background in mind. And even still, like, with what I ended up doing, I'm not happy with it, but I'm just like, okay, whatever, who cares? Like, let's move on. This is just for practice. But I also decided to include like these little streaks in the sky just to help, again, push the viewer to where I want the viewer to look. One common thing that I'm sure you guys have seen by now, I keep using the clouds and, you know, even the little streaks in the sky to push the viewer to where I want the focal point to be. And that's one main thing that I notice that I do with all backgrounds is like, if I'm gonna draw a background and it might not be something that I necessarily enjoy all the time, let me make sure it helps my drawing rather than hurt it. Great, and that basically wraps it up for this challenge here. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing my process throughout the 7 days. This was getting kind of tough towards the end, as you can see. However, I'm happy that I did this challenge to test myself, to see what it's like to stick to something that I might not necessarily enjoy. For portraits, it's easy for me to draw those every day because that's probably one of my favorite things to draw. But when it comes to layouts, backgrounds, I was having a tough time falling in love with the process. But looking back at all these pieces, I really do like them all in their own individual way. My favorite one, I would say, is gonna have to be either day 2 or day 3. Day 2 specifically because I just love the way the texture of the brushes look, everything even down to the simplicity of the painting itself. And then as for the day 3, I really like that one just because, I don't know, I just like the composition. That was a big thing that I was trying to focus on with these studies, is trying to push a composition and tell a story and like force you to look where I wanted you to look. And I feel like I did that successfully with that piece. Make sure to let me know in the comments which one is your favorite one that I did. And if you give these challenges a try, you know, you could tag me, send them to me, whatever. Hey, and even let me know what challenge you guys would want to see me do next, because I do want to make this like a series that I do where I'm like 7 days straight gonna study this, study this, study this. And subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.